Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to be teaching you how to make Japanese denim. What you'll need for this project is 2 to 2.5 meters of your fabric of choice, preferably a medium weight non-stretch fabric, pattern paper, /tape and scissors, a sewing machine and a steam iron, and then a serger machine is optional if your sewing machine has a zigzag function, a ½ meter of iron-on fusing, and then your basic sewing things like chalk, fabric scissors, pins, thread, and then for this project you'll need 4 buttons for the hardware, and of course rulers and a tape measure will also be helpful. The first step is to print out the pattern that I have linked in the description below. You can either print on the home printer small size, which is a little tedious and requires tiling the paper out like I'm doing in this clip here, or you can just print large format, and that's a bit quicker and also waste less paper. And all you have to do is just cut out the pattern like I'm doing here in this video, get all your pieces together, and you'll notice on the pattern it has either a selvage option or a non-selvage option. And basically if you want to do the selvage option, you just cut on the selvage line and then cut your fabric with that pattern instead. Once you got your pattern pieces cut out, you want to start by pre-washing your fabric in the washing machine a few times, and also pre-pressing your fabric and then folding it in half, and then you're ready to start laying your paper patterns on top of your fabric that's folded in half. You want to make sure that you line your grain line, which is the red line going through the patterns, according to the selvage line so that your jeans don't come out warped if you wash them. But once you got it laid on top of the fabric, what you can do is you can either trace it out with chalk or you can pin it into the fabric and then cut with the paper on top of it. I like to use the chalk method, but it's really personal preference here. Once you got all your patterns chalked out or pinned to the fabric, you're ready to start cutting. Just keep in mind that the cleaner your cuts, the cleaner your final product will be, so it's good to take your time here and make it super well done. And you should have all your pieces cut out like this. And once you got all your pieces cut out, you're ready for the first step, which is fusing, interfacing to the 3 parts that I've shown here. It's basically you're going to fuse to the fly guard, the button fly, and then the waistband. Once you have your things fused together, you're ready to start on the back of the pants, and we're starting with the yoke. You can see I fused the back yoke of my pants, but that's not really necessary. I'm just using a really lightweight fabric, so I decided to fuse it for some extra strength. What you want to do is you want to sew this in at 3/4 of an inch or 19 millimeters, and then you're going to repeat that to both your back panels. And now I'm going to teach you how to do a flat felled seam, which we'll be doing a few times, so it's good to reference this part. What you do is you start by opening the seam by pressing it open with some steam and then clipping the bottom seam allowance in half. You're then going to fold and press the bottom seam up and then fold the top seam over itself so that it creates a finished edge like I'm doing in the video here. You're then going to sew down the seam and the folds you just made with a double top stitch. A double top stitch is basically what you're going to do is top stitch what you just did at 1/8 of an inch or a bit less than 1/8 of an inch, and then on that seam you just made, you're going to do a 3/8 of an inch seam or 9 millimeter seam, and that's how you do your double top stitches. I also added a little note: for your top stitches you want to use a stitch length of 3, and then for your regular stitches you're going to use a stitch length of 2.5. Once you have your back yoke complete, we're going to work on the back pockets. To start this off, you're going to start by transferring the points of your back pocket onto your back panels using an awl and then some chalk. And then you'll just have those 5 points marked down, ready to transfer the back pockets that you're about to sew onto your pants. To do the back pockets, we're just going to follow the pattern template and basically mark along the sides at 3/8 of an inch or 9 millimeters along all the corners, or all the sides I mean, and then we're ready to start pre-pressing this pattern down. So to do the pre-pressing, what you're going to do is you're going to fold the top part over at 3/8 of an inch or 9 millimeters, and then you're going to do all the sides at 3/8 of an inch or 9 millimeters. And I like to do the 2 sides first and then the bottom ones, just so that we can get the bottom ones looking as even as possible and as symmetrical as possible. But basically you're going to do all the sides and then fold the top over itself once again so that it has a clean finish and you're ready to start sewing the top part of that back pocket. To sew the top part of the back pocket, you're going to do a double top stitch once again, which is just like I said, an 1/8 of an inch or a few millimeters, and then a 3/8 of an inch stitch or 9 millimeters. for my English people. But once you got that done, you're going to press both your back pockets again and have them looking nice and crispy for the time you're about to attach it to the back panels. As you can see, we got our points marked out, so it's really easy to just lay them on top of there. But here's the thing, you don't want to go point to point on the top. You want to leave a bit of ease so that you can easily access your back pockets once it's finally sewn, because if you go right to the points and it's flat, it'll be too hard to access your back pockets. So that's why we add a little ease to it. I just put my all in there and that is more than enough. But what you're going to do after that, you're just going to attach them down and do once again another double top stitch. I'm not going to repeat the measurements this time because you should know it by now. Okay, I'll do it one more time. It's 1/8 of an inch or a bit less than 1/8 of an inch or a few millimeters, and then a 3/8 of an inch stitch from that, or 9 millimeters. Now that we got both of our back pockets down, we're going to flip to the insides of all of our panels and then just copy down our darts that we made from the pattern and either use some chalk. I like to use this like heat erasable pen, and I think those give you like really sharp lines, and then you just use the iron to take them off. But here I am just pinning those darts together. You just want to pin them together and make sure that they're touching the lines on both sides, and then you're ready to stitch those down on your sewing machine at a 2.5 stitch length. And that's just what I'm doing in these next few clips. I'm just getting all those darts down on the front and the back panels. The back panel has 2 and then the front has 1, and this will give you a nice sharp look to your pant once it's finished. But once you're done that, you're just going to press your darts inwards to the pant, and then the front panel that you're pressing, you're going to press it to center front, which is towards the fly. Yeah. In this clip, I'm just doing the front panels, but I think you get the idea from that, from showing the back panels. But yeah, you're just following the lines, making it as sharp as you can, and pivoting at the bottom there for the hem, of course. And then once again, pressing the front. And then what we're going to do is connect our 2 back panels together. By putting your 2 right sides together, you're going to do that, and then doing the inside seam at a 3/4 of an inch or 19 millimeters, and yeah, just following the curve, making sure it's nice and clean. And then you have your back panels connected. You're gonna once again flat fell this seam. I'm just demoing it here once again and kind of going over it because it's kind of the most important thing to get down for the pants, and you're gonna repeat it quite a few times, so it's good to get it cleanly done and so that you get it tacked down from both sides. But basically, you're going to stretch and fold over the larger seam after you clipped it right to the seam line, and then press that down with some steam, and then once again open it up and then fold it over itself so that it has a clean finish. And then you're ready to tack it down once again on your sewing machine, doing a double top stitch. And if you've done it correctly and you've cut it in half and then folded it right to the seam, you will hit both sides and it will give you a clean finish from both sides. In this clip, I'm just double top seaming it down right to the crotch, and then we're ready to start the next part. Now we're moving on to the front of the pants, and we're going to do the pocket bags. So you can see I've marked the seam allowance on the pocket facing, and the facing is just there so that if you're using a different fabric for your pocket bag, that your facing just covers that up so that you can only see the same material on your pants once you've stitched it down. But what you do is you fold that under at 3/8 of an inch or your 9 millimeters, and then you're gonna basically tack that down to your pocket bags. And to do this, once again, you're gonna do a double top stitch. So basically just finish both those pocket bags, and yeah, once you've got those double top stitch down, you're ready to pre-serge the bottom of your pocket bag. And for this, you're gonna leave it open, and this is important for later. Once you've got that pre-serged, you're gonna connect your pocket bags to your front panels, right sides together, and it's kind of tricky to like figure out what side to use sometimes, so I'm just demoing it here for easiness. And my apologies, I didn't show a clip for this, but you're gonna stitch that down at 3/8 of an inch, press the seam open, and then finish it with a double top stitch once again. You want to make sure that when you finish it with the double top stitch that your pocket bag is a bit under so that it's not showing from the outside. Now you're ready to tack your pocket bags together, so you just basically put the right sides together on the inside there and then stitch that down at 3/8 of an inch or 9mm once again, going up right to the seam allowance as close as you can, right to the side seam allowance, and then your pocket should be ready and complete. And now we're going to move on to the pleats on the front panels. Using the notches that you made, you're basically just going to fold those over each other and then give it a little press and make sure that your pleats are perpendicular to each other so that it's not like a angled looking pleat when you're finished, you know what I'm saying? But once you got your pleats there, you're going to pin them together, and then what we're going to do is called a basting stitch, and that is basically turning your stitch length to 4 or like the longest setting possible. And then we're going to do a top basting stitch on the pocket and the pleat that you just made at 1/4 of an inch or 6mm. Now we should have our front and back panels pretty much complete. The back panels are all connected and we're basically ready to start the fly on the front now. What you're going to do is you're going to take your fly and your fly guard that you fused, and then you're going to fold it in half and press it and then pre-serge just like I'm showing in this diagram in the video clip. Once you've got that done, you're going to take your button fly, and similar to what we did with the awl and the back pockets, we're going to transfer the points from the pattern that we have and then mark them onto the button fly. Once you've got those marked on the button fly, you're going to put in your buttonholes. To do this, if you have a button function on your machine, you just put the button in the back basically, and then it does it for you. And if you don't have a button function on your machine, you can also use a zigzag stitch. It's like same thing, but it's just more tedious. And you just basically have to make sure that the button will go through the buttonholes. Next, what we're going to do is on the front leg inside there, we're going to mark 3/4 of an inch or 19mm, and then we're going to go right up to the notch there and leave a 1mm distance there, because what we're going to do is fold it over and then over itself, and we don't want any raw edges showing, and then press that down, and then you're going to top stitch that what you just did at 3/8 of an inch or 9mm once again. Then we're going to attach the button fly to what we just made, leaving a little gap once again of 1mm, 1 to 2mm, you know, less than 1/8 of an inch, just so that it's not visible from the outside. Then you're going to pin that down, and then you're going to take the fly template that we have in the pattern and trace that out on the right side, and then stitch that down at 3 stitch length, following the curve all the way to the top. Once we've got that first seam down, we're going to follow it once again with a double top stitch on the inside, and that'll just be 3/8 of an inch from the first seam, and then finish that curve right to the end. Once we've got that done, we're going to move on to the fly guard side. With the right sides together, as you can see, I serged this. You don't have to serge that. I kind of messed that up, but you're going to serge it over after anyway, so like, you know, kind of doubled up there. But yeah, stitch it down at 3/8 of an inch or 9mm, and then finish it up with a zigzag or a serge. And using the notch that we made on the pattern, we're just going to clip it the bottom seam allowance, not the fly guard, but the bottom seam allowance right up to the seam without actually cutting the seam. And then we're going to fold that over itself so it opens up like this, as you can see in the clip, and put some steam on that, you know, press it all real good, and then your flies are complete. That is the hardest part of the pants. Now, similar to the back panels, we're going to connect the front panels together. So putting the right sides together, notches to notches, curve to curve, you're basically going to arc a distance of 3/4 of an inch or 19mm, and you just want to pin the center fronts together, which is basically the center front notch that we have on the pattern closest to the flies. And then sew that arc down at 3/4 of an inch or 19mm, making sure your arc is super clean because this part's really important. And then once again, we're going to flat fill that seam. So on the fly button part, we're clipping that seam allowance in half and then pressing over the fly guard part over itself 2 times, and then you have that curved and stretched fabric there that you're ready to double top stitch on your sewing machine once again. This part, it's useful to just put a little pin in there on your 2 center front notches, just so that it lines up when you do the double top stitch here. For the double top stitch, you're going to do the same as usual, going right up to the fly template that we did. As you can see, I'm just demoing it here. You're basically going to go all the way up to that point on the second top stitch there, and then do a pivot. And then once you've done that, you're going to come back down the pant, and we're just showing that here. It takes a while, but I wanted to show the full seam just so you can see exactly how I did it. And that should hit both seams from both sides. And then you have your fly and front parts fully connected. At this point, you want to add a bar tack or a little zigzag stitch onto the fly guard. You know, you're going to go through all the layers here. Don't worry about that. Like, this is just so that it doesn't open up in your pants, you know. Kind of annoying if you just like have a little fly guard flying around in there, you know. But yeah, you just zigzag those down. I use a contrast stitch so you can see. Then you're ready to serge the outside seams of all of your panels. So you're not going to do the inside seams because we're going to flat fell those as well, but we just want to pre-serge all the outside seams. So once you've got those pre-serged, you're ready to do your inside seams. As you can see, there's a little bit of a gap here. There's just ease in the crotch. You're just basically stretch that out from the middle point. As you can see in the pattern, there's like a little arrow showing like the ease marks. And if you line up all the notches and you just stretch on the crotch part, it should work out nicely. And basically that'll just help your pants fit better, having a little bit of ease there, and it'll help it fold under. So what you're going to do is stitch down the entire inside seam at 3/4 of an inch or 19 millimeters once again. And then once we've finished that, we're going to basically flat fell the entire seam, which is kind of a long process, but you know, it's worth it. It's worth it. To do this, you're just going to cut the front, so the top part of the front, in half, and then do your double top stitch once again. And once you've got that done, you should make sure that it hit from both sides, and then you're ready to start sewing the side seams down. So putting the right sides together, you're going to sew both the side seams down at 3/4 of an inch or 19 millimeters once again. Once you've got those sewn down on both the side seams, you're going to press this seam open, and at this point you're ready to do a fitting just to make sure that the width is correct. And we've left quite a lot of seam allowance so we can shorten it or lengthen it, whatever fits best. So, you know, try it on at this point. It will fit a bit low because we haven't put the waistband in, but it should give you a rough estimate of your fit. Now we're ready to go onto the waistband. So we have it pre-fused. What we're going to do is fold it in half and then press it, and then fold in both the sides at 3/8 of an inch, aka 9 millimeters. And then once you got that, we're going to do some belt loops. So to do the belt loops, all you're going to do is following the same pattern line so that your belt loops are the same as your pattern. You're going to do 2-inch width and 32 inches long, and then fold that in half and sew it at a 1/2 inch seam allowance or 13 millimeters. And once you've got that strip sewn at 13 millimeters, you're going to cut or grade the fabric just in half. And then once you've got that cut in half, you're going to turn or use a hole turner or a paper clip method to basically hole turn the entire belt strip loop inside out so that it's a clean finish. And then double top stitch the sides of your entire belt loop so you have one big long strip. And then once you've done that, you're going to cut the belt loops into 4-inch sections. You should have 8 equal belt loop sections after you've done that, using the measurements that I left there. Next, you're going to pin your belt loops right sides together. As you can see, there's a seam on the wrong side of the belt loop and you don't want that showing. But this is kind of preference. I've left a example and shown where I think is the best spots for it, but you don't have to follow that. So now we're going to do our waistband. So we've had our waistband pre-pressed. What we're going to do is go right sides together, following the entire waistband and pinning it down so that the edges touch. There is a notch on the waistband pattern, and what you want to do with that notch is leave a little bit of distance so that you have enough space to fold it over itself and have a clean finish, which it'll make more sense as we do it, but basically just line up that notch to the fly guard side. Alright, so now we're on our sewing machine. So yeah, not only do we have that distance to the notch that's overhanging, we're also going to start sewing, leaving a distance of 2-inch on the waistband from the fly guard and the fly buttonhole. on both sides, and then tack that down around the whole waistband at 3/8 of an inch or 9 mm, just going around the whole waistband like I'm doing here, right sides together once again. So now that we've got that whole waistband tacked down, right sides together, we're gonna fold over the waistband onto itself, and then basically just continue the line from the fly guard or the fly buttonhole, depending on what side you're doing. I'm starting with the fly guard side, and you're just gonna basically make a line straight from that, as I'm kind of trying to show here. I just kind of free-handed it, but I'd recommend marking it down. I've just done this a lot of times, you know what I'm saying? So but anyways, yeah, stitch that down at a 2.5 stitch length, following the line you made, making sure you're not catching the bottom of the pant here. You can just actually like keep those separate. But yeah, once you've done that, you're gonna grade the seam allowance that you just made so that it's nice and neat when you fold it over itself like I'm doing here, and then just use, you know, something like a paintbrush or a pencil to fold it over itself, and you should have a clean finish end on both your fly guard and your button fly on both sides if you've done that correctly, and then you're ready to top stitch the entire waistband. I'd recommend making sure that on the bottom side the waistband that you pre-pressed is still folding over itself so it has a clean finish. You basically just don't want any raw edges. And then when you do the top stitch, I like to just like fill with my nail to make sure that I'm hitting both sides and tacking down both sides. But yeah, just do the entire waistband at a top stitch. One thing you want to do is when you get to the other end of the fly, you're just going to make sure that both your waistbands are level to each other and that the seams intersect each other. And since we left that 2-inch distance, it's easier to make sure that they line up to each other, and you can just move it a little bit if you have to. But once you've got your whole waistband top stitch, you're ready to take out the pins on your belt loops, and then you're going to mark a distance of a 1/2 inch on each of your belt loops just at the top there, and those are just so that we know how far to fold them over onto each other. And at this stage, you're just going to tack those down to the top of your waistband using a top stitch. And you can also do a bar tack or a zigzag stitch on all of your belt loops if you would like, but that's preference once again, so do as you will. For the final step on the waistband, all we're going to do is add one more buttonhole at the top of the pant, and we're going to use a 3/8 of an inch or 9mm distance here. But once you've got that done, you're ready to do a final fitting for the length of your pants. So we're just basically completing the hem here. Basically what you want to do is fit the pants and then make sure you have 2 inches left over on your hem so that you can do your turn back or double turn over on your hem and finish the bottom part of your pants. So as you can see here, just left 2 inches, and now my length is how I want it. I recommend leaving this pattern a bit longer. You know, it looks nice if it's like very long. So once you've got that ready, you're gonna mark a 2-inch distance on your hem of your pants and then press that down on both your pant leg openings. Flip your pants inside out and then mark a 1/2 inch or 13mm from the raw edge, as I'm doing here, and fold that seam under, and it should be a finished seam basically, and you're ready to hem your pants at the bottom. For the hem at the bottom of the seam allowance, we're going to mark it in at 1 3/8 of an inch, 35mm, and then I like to just mark around the entire bottom of the pant leg, just that we hit both seams on the inside and the outside and have a clean finish for the final product. And then we're just gonna stitch in the seam allowance that we just marked, going around the entire pant leg, starting from the inside just so that it looks the cleanest and you don't have the back tack on the outside seam there, you know what I'm saying? But once you go around the hem on both legs, you're just gonna give that one final press and your hem should be complete, and then your pants are pretty much almost finished at this stage. Hooray! The final step for making your pants is to basically just open up the buttonholes that you've stitched down, being careful that you don't accidentally cut through the stitching. And yeah, just basically get through all 4 of those buttonholes, making sure a button will fit through each one as I'm doing in the video clip. Once you're sure that your button will go through, you're ready to mark down where all the buttons will go in your jeans or your pants. So it's hard to see what I'm doing here, but I'm basically just marking through the buttonholes on the closest or furthest side, because that's the side that the button will be on. And then I'm using a grommet press here, but if you don't have that, you can use like the hammer method for the buttons or a pipe wrench method, and I'm sure there's videos on there demoing that. I won't get into too much details here, but you're going to put in all 4 of your buttons and making sure that it opens correctly. Your pants are pretty much done. Give your pants one final good press so it's looking nice and crisp, and then put some steam on that, and then yeah, that's pretty much your pants complete. Thank you everyone for watching. If you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to me in the comments. And who's that guy, you know what I'm saying? Okay, if any of you actually made these pants, send me some pics. I'd like to see. It's my first time doing a long format tutorial like this, so if you have any feedback, just let me know. I'm trying to make this good, so I'm trying to do this thing. So yeah, goodbye.